Hi guys, this short video is to emphasize and remind you guys on how to study in my General Chemistry 2 course. General Chemistry 2, also known as Chem 1062, how, how to study in this course, the suggested study route. And I'm going to use chapter 12, which is the first chapter that we are covering as an example, chapter 12. So our lectures are 2 hours long. Okay, every lecture 2 hours long. This is an evening class. So we have two 2-hour lecture videos. You look at the lecture and lab schedule here. We have two 2-hour lecture videos. Chapter 12 is physical properties of solutions. You have video 1 and you have video 2. So this is lecture 1 and this is lecture 2. So 2 hours on Monday, 2 hours on Wednesday. So that's what I mean by two 2-hour lectures. And then after that, you have your test and your homework first, and then your test after that. But we are talking about the studying, uh, studying through the lectures, which will obviously prepare you for the homework and the test. So the first thing you want to do is to print the lecture notes. You want to print the lecture notes. So you go here to lectures, chapter 12 notes. You have the notes in PDF and you also have them in PowerPoint. I would suggest you print the PowerPoint because you can adjust the number of pages on each paper. You can print 4 pages so that you leave spaces, or you can even print 2 pages, 2 slides. You can adjust the number of slides to be printed on each paper. Maybe you can print 2 slides so that it gives you space to make additional notes and things like that. Or you can print 4 slides on a sheet of paper depending on you. You can test it and see what really works for you. So now you print the lecture notes. Then the second thing to do is use the notes to watch the first lecture, which is video 1. And how do you use the notes to watch that first lecture? The notes that you have printed has already written material in it. So when you are watching the video, you don't have to write down those things that are already written. That gives you time to focus on the lecture and pay attention to understand the explanation. As you go along, I usually give additional notes, okay, on top of what is written down. So you look at those and you judge whether it is good for you to write them down. And I always suggest that my students should write down those additional notes as well. Okay. Then eventually we are going to get into an example in the lecture. The first thing you want to do is watch me solve that example. Pay attention closely. Then once that example is done, this is the beauty of recorded notes. Pause the video. Okay, pause the video and then put it aside, put your notes aside, get only the question on a plain sheet of paper and solve that question on your own without any help. That is no video, no notes, no textbook. You want to do that because every example we solve in the lecture is a potential exam question. So test yourself right there. When you test yourself and you get stuck somewhere, don't be scared. That is normal. Okay? You want to refer back to the notes and the video, back to where you got stuck. Watch what I did again. And you put all the materials aside and start from the beginning. Solve it until you get past that point that you got stuck. So be sure that you can solve the question from start to finish without looking at the video in between or without looking at the notes in between. That means you are now able to solve that kind of an example if it comes in the exam, in the test or in the exam. Okay. Then you don't continue to watch the lecture. You are still in that example. You go to the textbook. You go to the textbook now. You do the practice exercise that is associated with that example. And after that, you do the similar problem that is associated with that example. Now let's go to the textbook here. E-textbook. Let's go to the content, table of contents. We are starting with chapter 12. So this is the first example. In the notes, this is the second example. Now let me just use example 12.2. So I usually solve this in the lecture. So once you've practiced on it, then this is a practice exercise associated with example 2.2. Be able to solve this practice exercise on your own. The answer to this practice exercise is at the end of the chapter, the end of this chapter 12. So solve it on a plain sheet of paper without looking at anything except the tables and the calculator that you need and maybe constants for some examples. Solve it and be able to get to the answer that is at the end of this chapter for practice exercise 12.2. You get that? Then you go to similar problem 12.15. You go to similar problem 12.15. This similar problem is close to this example 12.2 and also this practice exercise. Solve it. The answer to this practice similar problem is at the end of the textbook. Okay. So when you do that, you must have tested yourself in solving the example, the practice exercise, and the similar problem. 3 problems in one concept. That should have given you enough experience or a good amount of experience. Okay. Then you come back now, continue watching the video for the first lecture. Every example that we get to, you have to repeat steps 4 to 6. Every example. That is, first of all, watch me solve it, pause the video, get a plain sheet of paper, solve it on your own. Then you go to the practice exercise in the textbook, solve it also on your own. And then the similar problem, you solve it on your own. Okay. So you keep doing that. And also in places where I make additional notes, you continue to make, where I give additional notes, you continue to take them down as necessary. When you are done with the chapter, okay, now you judge it whether you have enough time or not. If you have some more time, you want to go now to the end of chapter exercises and you solve as many as time will allow you to solve. Solve as many as time will allow you to solve. Solving end of chapter questions always makes a difference in the performance of students because in your exam and your test, you'll be solving problems. Okay. Okay, as time will allow you. Then now you go to your homework. Go to your homework. In your homework, you are solving the questions that are for the first lecture. So you are going to divide your homework into 2 portions. The questions for the first half, or approximately the first half, will be for the first lecture, and for the second half, they will be for the second lecture. So you solve every question that you recognize that comes from the first lecture. Solve all of it right there. And you leave your work, it is being saved automatically. Okay. And then the second, then for the second lecture, you repeat steps 2 to 9. For the second lecture, steps 2 to 9. Use your notes to watch, make additional notes. Every example you do, as you do those three things. Solve the example on your own, solve the practice exercise, and then you solve the similar problem. Then after that, you go to the homework and you finish doing the homework. Okay. When you study like that, you spread out the material. You understand it very well, and you have good experience as you go along in the lecture. And that prepares you to do the homework, and all together they prepare you. Both this method of study and your homework will prepare you to take the chapter test, and you'll be able to do very well in your first attempt in the chapter test. And when you do well in the chapter test, it goes a long way to also prepare you to do well in the exam. So I hope this method of study is taken very seriously and followed diligently.